it's March, and so I'm thinking it's maybe time for me to do this video by now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my thoughts on what I think was the best music of 2022. I've got some honorable mentions that I'll just kind of play a series of clips of those things to let you kind of hear them. Won't be talking about those. And then I have like my top 40 albums of the year. I'm excited to make this video, but also making this video requires time. Time that I have spent doing things besides making this video. But here it is, finally doing it. So again, welcome to the channel. I talk about music. Lately I've been making videos of myself playing drums to various songs that I enjoy. Plan on continuing to do that. I have different kind of series going on my channel. I love making videos, but lately I find myself like the videos I want to make they take a lot of preparation and effort, and it seems like it takes me a little while longer to come out with them, along with just having a relatively busy life. There's always things we got to do. But just excited to finally come out with this video. I think that's enough for me. I hope you enjoy the video. Hope that you hear about some stuff that you'd like to check out. It's always good to find new music that you just love. It enriches one's life. And so I hope that together we, maybe you could comment some things that you think I missed. I would love to find new music. And hopefully if you're watching this video, maybe you'll find some new music. Maybe you'll love some of that music a lot, just like I do. So here we go, beginning with the honorable mentions now.
Diving and kicking the heads off rats. We've both got an itch we can't quite scratch.
Inside my mind is a diamond mine. This is a homicide. Took it to trial, beat it like Amistad. Ask my top 5, but I reply me 5 times like Dylon.
completes the honorable mentions. Now we're moving along into my top 40 albums of the year. They are in no particular order. These are just a list. I guess they're kind of in an order that I wanted to talk about them in, but they're not, it's not worst to best, certainly not that. I don't really care about doing that to music. Just don't really care. I just want to listen to music for what it is. If I like it, I like it. If I don't like it, you're not going to see it on the list. Here we go. Starting with my top 40 favorite albums of 2022 in March. Just so you guys know, I am reading off my computer. I have some notes here. So, this EP, Cohort B, it's an EP with some pretty serious character. It does the heavy side of the post-punk hardcore stuff, does it very well. And the song structures and the writing are consistently engaging and fascinating. I love the different song passages with their unique riffs and their progressive elements at times. And it's distorted in all the right places, and the song ideas develop really well. At times it can be abrasive, but then at other times it can be sort of warm and friendly. And above all, I find this to be extraordinarily entertaining. Quite a good EP.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, next up we have this Lobsterfight album called Sun Soaking. I have this one on cassette, which is interesting. It's only the second cassette I've ever had. So it's some pretty brash, kind of crazy, kind of Midwest emo, but it has a lot of positive energy, a lot of interesting instruments that are involved as sort of like a staple component of the sound. Pianos, horns, violin, harmonica. The singing is distinctly unkempt. There is a pretty clear knowledge of how to play instruments, but at the same time, they just kind of don't care about that training. It's more like it comes across as brash and passionate, expressive, and sort of like casually brilliant. I love this one. It reminds me of bands that I like a lot that I think are kind of funny. Something like the Dead Milkmen, or there's a band called PEEP, or like that band Honest Bob and the Factory to Dealer Incentives, who they're like funny, but at the same time they're all like MIT students. I don't know, and also on this album it sounds like they recorded it all in one take, and they just kind of kept the sort of raw, expressive thing that they captured during the recording. It's really good. So this Asian Glow album, it's gorgeous. It involves emo rock, sort of like the freak folk thing. It would be maybe a good way of describing some of the sections of it. And very kind of beautiful electronic like soundscapes. It's a very eclectic variety of sounds. A heavy dose of experimental ambition. The writing is there's just surprises at every turn. It's the lyrics, it's this kind of great like self-exploration and kind of introspection. This is an artist I think we need to keep our eye on because they do kind of a lot. Fairly prolific.
I noticed you, yes, those stars.
Okay, this album, Jockstrap. One word you can say about this album would be daring. Certainly daring. Their sound can be pretty screwed up, but they always sell you on it. It's like, I dare you to like this sort of abrasive or odd or confusing. It just kind of throws you off. I dare you to like it. And they sell you on it. Listening through it is like listening to sort of like a series of magic tricks or misdirection. It's a really interesting and kind of inspiring mix of acoustic and electronic elements. It and the album feels very playful at the same time as it feels very earnest. The lyrics, they kind of go from introspection and love and darkness to like actual memes. And it comes across as very authentic, yet like perpetually online, you know, like kind of our generation of people who are just always on their phone. It comes across in that way. It goes from just like, sometimes it goes also from like very danceable to very beautiful to very harsh to then like stark minimalism. But it's got such a strong personality that ties it all together. It's a really wonderful release by this pretty new group. Oxbow, experimental rock band, collaboration with experimental, very avant-garde jazz artist Peter Brotzmann. It's a fascinating collaboration between these two kind of legends in their own little respective worlds. And I guess they're somewhat fans of each other, or at least they enjoy playing together, because somehow they came upon this event where they played this live show. Essentially, it's Oxbow playing a live set, and Brotzmann is kind of there. And he's doing like a free jazz, 5-head, multi-dimensional chess brainiac thing that Peter Brotzmann is very capable of doing. And him just simply being there turns out to be a very powerfully expressive thing. It's an absolutely jaw-dropping performance from everyone involved. And everyone's kind of making space for each other to shine here in this performance. And now Oxbow is a band, they can warp time while staying together, which is fascinating for them to listen to them do live. You know, there's a lot of chemistry there with them as a band. And it's very interesting to hear how they as a group are together making room for this guest in Peter Brotzmann. I never would have expected this release, but I am also really glad that the performance and this release happened. Okay, this Pianos Become the Teeth album. It's unfortunately an underrated album by a really great band. There is a lot of subtlety to this album. It's sort of thoughtfully knit together, and each sound is carefully crafted. The super cool lyrics from songs, they reference back to other ones on the album, and it kind of gives the album some good narrative content. That seems to be about death and dementia and topics related to that sort of thing. Not exactly sure. And this album is chock full of beautiful atmosphere and also breathtaking moments of explosiveness. Definitely wish this was a little bit like more appreciated, this album. So Julian Lage. I'm always looking forward to what Julian Lage will do next. He's one of those artists that you got to keep your eye on, because when they do something, it's gonna be great. So this album, there's so much space in the music, and Julian here, he really plays with the atmosphere that they're creating, and it's a very interesting thing to do from a compositional standpoint in jazz in particular. You know, playing with the space and the atmosphere. The thing about Julian Lage is that no one touches a guitar better than this guy. He just has that touch. And then he plays with these guys, Dave King, who's been one of my favorite drummers for years, and then this guy, Jorge Roeder, who's been on some of the albums with these guys. These guys absolutely crushed it. These guys together, they're so inventive and also playful. But together they have this immense amount of taste. You know, the album is so tasteful, like impossibly tasteful. It's like, wow, everything they're doing is just completely delicious. And it really seems like at this point, these three guys are playing together, and when this is happening, absolutely nothing can go wrong. I mean, this is not their first release together, you know, and so far what they've done has really been special. Okay, this Kneebody live concert footage album, shorter album. It's something like jam jazz, where they use lots of effects on their instruments, including the horns. And they shred together over some very interesting and sort of experimental changes in song structures. They communicate so well and so uniquely as a band. Together they have such a clear voice and such a clear end goal as individuals in a band. And you can hear that all that camaraderie is in the recording. There is so much virtuosity on display here in terms of improv and compositional elements and just communication. And Nate Wood, he's just such a great drummer.
Job done, no word from anyone. I scoured the poor halls, the strip bars, the casino.
So this Black Midi Hellfire album, I love this band. I do think that this is their best album. I love all three of them, but it is their best one so far, in my opinion. It's amazingly ambitious, and it's quite a thing to behold. The performances, they're completely unmatched, and sometimes the density sort of rivals like elemental osmium, the densest element. I used to be a chemistry major. Whatever, that's nerdy. So there's massive variety, and there's unwavering vision, absolutely just bubbling over in kind of conceptual richness through this album. This is the shape of punk to come. I think we can tell that. Just their career trajectory so far. This is the shape of punk to come. And this is a testament to guitar music still being a powerful force. This is also some of the finest narrative content I've heard in an album. Just their approach to the through line of the narrative and what they're trying to say. It's really cool and interesting. And, you know, they're trying to make it just like you could just catch details everywhere. They're really kind of crafting a cool whole conceptual thing. It's really nice. But it's all just a bunch of fart jokes at the same time, and the album asks you to humor it, and then it asks you to kind of like reflect on the world, and then it asks you to like reflect on yourself, and then it asks you to say just like, oh well, who cares, and move on. And that, or you just play the whole album again.
I shot him in the back. Some triple game over, shook my fucking hand. He turned away. I shot him in the back.
While we're on the topic of Black Midi, they did release this live album. I got it on CD from Japan. It was like an import. So the thing about this, are there, because I've seen what people have said about it, are there mixing issues? Yeah, there are. Now that elephant in the room, for people who know about this, now that elephant in the room is addressed, let's move on to how immensely enjoyable this is as a release. And I think that is especially true for someone like me who does listen to the live footage of the band on YouTube. And, I saw them in October. That was a really great show, really exciting to go to that. So to execute these songs, which they've composed live, is quite a marvelous feat. Not being able to hide behind any of the studio hijinks. And they do it with such command, and I would say such maturity. And it's also impressive at the same time as coming off as just absolutely hilarious, which, in the last thing I said about their album, I said fart joke. But, when I listen to this live stuff, I literally just crack up laughing on almost every song because the performance is impressive, but also just the sense of humor. It's laughably good, right? The energy is totally nuts, and they very often do sound like they're having the time of their lives playing this music. It comes off as very from the depths. It's very passionate. It's just a thing they really love doing, and they love doing this music together as a band.
Same night Kamasi played the Hollywood Bowl, sputtering rage abreast the new laws, governing decay as my teeth fall. It didn't make sense like collecting used Band-Aids. I don't like people, all my problems are man-made.
Okay, so this guy's been doing really wildly artistic hip-hop music under various pseudonyms for a good amount of time. This pseudonym is Rap Ferreira or something. Okay, this album is such a great addition to his catalog. This one in particular is more positive and upbeat, and it's conscious and thoughtful, and every track kind of feels like being in a dream, atmospherically and like timbrally. There's lots of cool jazz influenced and sampled productions here, and everything is done with such kind of like taste. Even those things on the album that can be kind of dense and heavy-handed are done with taste. I don't really get a clear concept or through line from listening to this. Maybe that's just on me, like I don't understand it, but his music's always very complicated, especially lyrically. But this poetry here, it really is kind of incredible to listen to. This album by Author and Punisher, what a great, interesting approach to music that this guy has. On here, he kind of makes a bit of a departure. He's using kind of more like melodic and like chordal synths more heavily on this album, as well as some more clean vocals. He's of course still going with the industrial drone metal thing, using all these handmade, super heavy, metallic instruments of just instruments of utter desolation, which he continues to innovate these over the years, and they're still very much present on this album as well. All these giant husks of very heavy metal, which he manipulates in highly musical ways. So I think on this album, he does add more elements of listenability, yet he gets even more unrelenting sometimes than he's ever been. I've been sold on his stuff for some years, but if this sounds interesting and you're looking for a proof of concept of what this guy's trying to do, I think this is a very good place to start. Sobs. This album, air guitar. I think this is maybe the one that I think everyone watching this video will like. It's sort of it's probably the most listenable generally across the board. Like I would show it to my mom and she'd probably enjoy it. It's probably the album that's the most widely listenable album. Like look, it's the coolest indie rock album. There's so many interesting sounds and great lyrics and really good vocals and really terrific melodies. And it feels like a fresh and modern take on like the weirdo rock acts from like the 90s, like Garbage, if you know them, or this band Whale. It's so accessible and immediate at the surface level, but there is so much depth and richness that make it so easy for me to want to return for more listens, to just pick up on more of what they're doing. It is an absolute crime that this album has managed to stay this far under the radar. To me, this album is a total crowd pleaser. this Knoll album. It's grindcore that gets really nice and mathy. And it has plenty of like death elements and also some rather blackened vocal delivery. Blackened like blackened salmon. It's very engaging and it's an inspired album. There's so many good ideas and motifs that they explore here. And these ideas, they feel very fresh and everything is executed so convincingly. It's really hard not to dig this one. The tones all sound good. And there's even some trumpet. Like a lot of these tunes here, they're so full of flavor. So here's a really exciting math rock record that's so much fun and so engaging. The vocal performance kind of reminds me of like the Tony Hawk Pro Skater soundtracks, those kind of songs. Throughout this whole album, they never miss a moment to make music out of it. And while that may seem forced, it never really feels forced. They're really being musical. But they're having a lot of fun playing with kind of odd dissonances. And the song structures are really cool and unique. It's very like wall-to-wall packed in, like a lot of musical ideas. But it comes off, it's just like really fun and nice. So this band, I think it's really cool that they put out an album. They threw a little production value on what they were doing before. Great guitar tones and bass playing that really does contribute. So gives it some low end. It's very kind of gazy and heavy, and it's screamo music. You get the same great screams, those type of vocals, on some more ambitious songs with some more structure and some more carefully crafted parts than what we're used to them doing. This is a band that's been exciting here for a short amount of time, like maybe just a couple of years, as far as I've been aware of them. But this project is a really welcome addition to what they've already put out. Okay, Ashenspire, Hostile Architecture. It's a really strange black metal album where the saxophone and violin are frequently as essential as the normal instruments that you're used to hearing in this style, which these instruments are totally incredible all over this thing. Such cool parts that they play, such great compositions. So this album that has lyrics that are scathingly critical and very political. The lyrics are kind of about governing authorities, as well as like an expression of the turmoil of living in like terrible working conditions and being like working class. It's an album that tries to force you to feel, and I think it does that successfully. And I mean, they sure do pack a lot of content into the 45 minutes that this album is. There's loads of great metal compositions here, and it definitely fits the bill of like post-metal experimentation at times. And I just think what they're trying to do, they pull it off marvelously. Really unique metal album here. So Jameszoo put out an album this year. He's back at it again with more undefinable music that I find so engaging and entertaining, but also completely bewildering. There's acoustic instruments and electronic warped or shrill or harsh or just totally insane elements everywhere. There's lots of bizarre grooves that sort of roll like an egg. And it's totally unpredictable. It's one that does kind of require a bit of patience, but I do think that your patience will be rewarded.
Do you wanna meet my fist? That's something that I really do advise against. Bitch, we're taking vitamins. I'm an arsonist, you might as well call the fireman. Get up and then try again. I stand over you, sleep in the bed that you lying in.
It's not that serious, but I really enjoy it. First of all, American Wasteland, one of the best Tony Hawk games. But this album is basically just fun for me to listen to, very loud. A very particular and harsh style of beats all over this thing that I do think are very kind of unique, kind of interesting. This album, it does not come across like he's trying to put on a show. It's not for the faint of heart. It's pretty much just stark reality of living this guy's lifestyle, and it's experimental hip-hop right on the edge of insanity. But like I said, it's not that serious. It's just good. So this is an EP, it's fairly short. The song, it's a really short project, basically. It's a great math rock EP, and it's definitely not afraid of some pretty interesting dissonances, and it goes in some very interesting directions. Kind of a wild ride of an EP, but, there's not a whole lot here on this project. A lot of the other stuff that comes out by this artist, I've found myself not to be so into, but this in particular, I found to be really, really good. I'd love to see more stuff like this come from this artist. So earlier I was talking about Dave King being part of the Julian Lage band. Also, one of these founding members and composers for the band, The Bad Plus. I freaking love this band, and much of their output means a lot to me as a guy, as a music listener, as a musician. Their drummer, Dave King, one of my favorites. He plays in a way that's shaped by kind of thinking very compositionally, I would say, and supporting the song. All the members of the band write the songs, and then they present them to the band, and they come up with how they're going to play them together. It's very kind of like a democratic process. They all are working together, and they're just experimenting right on the cutting edge. And I can say the very same thing I said about Dave King. I can say the rest of I can say that also of the other guys in the band, which would be like Reed and Chris and Ben. The Bad Plus have sort of expanded the Overton window of what can be called jazz. That's something they're known for, sort of jazz historically, if you can call them historical by this point. Probably not quite, but I'll say that. They've expanded the Overton window of what can be called jazz, and I don't think that impact can be understated. I think it's sent a pretty heavy wave and introduced all kinds of people to like, ooh, you can kind of go down all these other sort of artistic experimental lanes, and it definitely is jazz, but it's definitely kind of just an experiment. So on this new album, they do this crazy thing where it's the first Bad Plus album that does not feature a piano player. And so adding to the mix of drums and bass, you have a saxophone in this guy Chris Speed, and a guitar player who I'm very fond of, Ben Monder, who he has fascinated me with lots of music that he's made in his career and different people that he's worked with, different projects. What a welcome invitation to the Bad Plus, this band that I already really enjoy. And then you add Ben Monder to this, it's like they're really kind of catering to my personal tastes here. So thank you so much. Together, these guys have me absolutely floored. This is a project filled to the brim with boldness and audacity in jazz, performances that shock and awe, and profound cohesion for sort of a newly formed set of guys that are working together in a band. Really excellent stuff. Now we're going to talk about the Deathspell Omega album, The Long Defeat. It's excellent black metal, requires patience, very, it gets a little on the doomy side. It's very smartly crafted work on the strings. And the drums kind of seem to even steer the album. They play just a huge role. Rich atmosphere. Interesting lyrics worth paying attention to, which sometimes I need to get on Google to pay attention to them, but that's worth doing. And, these guys are like actually like Satanists, like in like a traditional way. A little fun fact, a little nugget there. So on this album, there are some awesome moments where the music follows the lyrics. Like the way he's delivering it, the music is shaped like they're kind of letting him lead and kind of ebb and flow like he feels like it, and they're kind of shaping what's going on in the band. And the energy of these sections is just absolutely immense. This album is a bit slower and a bit more melodic, I think, than some of the stuff they've done in the past. And it knows and chooses the exact right moments to be absolutely relentless, but it also knows when to relent. And, it's great release. Another great release by a great band.
Something gotta give, spin another web, head home.
So the first time I heard this album, I thought it was like kind of disappointing, kind of like innocuous, like, okay, oh well. But I think it does reward a close listen. Maybe it becomes particularly innocuous, when you listen a little deeper. So a lot of it is about a certain recent disease that maybe some of you guys have heard about, which is also particularly innocuous. Ooh, this is fun. And this album seems sort of like the process of self-discovery and reflection on the past. And there's like mistakes and successes and reflection on this, but then also like being sick, having this recent disease. There's plenty of stuff getting said on this, some really cool collaborations on this, some very much more colorful than recent for his beats, and also a bit simpler, kind of a different direction. And it's Earl Sweatshirt. There is absolutely no skimpage in the poetry department. Animal Collective, sick band or group or whatever. This album is the best thing they've come out with recently, so I was very pleased to hear something that I liked by them. And it has moments that remind me of many different parts of their career. Some moments are noisier and harsh, some serene, some like dancey, and some are kind of like jam bandy. And there are some great and varied vocal performances and instrumentals that sound layered in a purposeful yet playful way all over these tracks. And they've managed to add this atmospheric thing, which is something they've been doing kind of more recently. They've added that into their sound in a way that I think sounds like really good Animal Collective music. And so this album, unlike some of the ones that are more recent, I actually feel like this is a more meaningful addition to their catalog, and so I'm very happy with it. Imperial Triumphant. I love you guys. This is yet another fantastic and fantastically odd metal album from this band. This time I find it to be more dizzying than ever, and that's probably mostly because of some of the percussion that's involved here. Its sound here is absolutely twisted and sickening, just like brooding darkness, and so many unexpected moments of compositional chaos, and also sometimes such wonderful and rich textures. And there's string sections, and of course there's the jazz style horns. Yet again with this band, several sounds that I don't think I've ever heard explored in metal, and they just kill it here yet again. What is the next thing that they're gonna sound like? Because they definitely keep me on my toes. So the Suicide Boys, they released one in July, and I didn't really care much about it. It was kind of softer and stuff. It was fine, but that album's not why I listen to Suicide Boys. It's not why I listen to them. But this one nice, bro. It's got that nasty like grit and like the drug influenced sound, heavy, blown out, distorted. That sort of thing that's basically classic for them at this point. It's just kind of their sound. But another element of their sound is that they're really funky sometimes with some bounce. And I like it when they lean into that stuff, and they do here. These two guys in Suicide Boys' vocal performances are always so on point. Two very different flows that work so well together. They have like serious chemistry. You can tell they get along, you know? And then you add this fellow named GERM to the mix, who I don't think is as great, but is good and does contribute a whole other flavor. But he's kind of more crazy and unhinged. But yeah, this album is good. Definitely happy to see another release from them that I really, really like. Okay, this album, it has what seems to be two lead vocalists. I'm not totally sure. Guitar, bass, and drums. But these guys, they make a whole lot of sound. Oftentimes, it's very lyrically dense shouting, and it's like very punk-influenced emo music. And there's tons of moments where the drummer, I think, is really good. I think he really shines. But these guys, they work well together. It's not a band I'm very aware of, but this release I thought was very good this year.
Red up on our clothes. I'm the same dude, always got your white phones. I will bug out with my Rolo, blowing out that smoke, smoking.
So Hackle seems to be like a much harsher version of Lil B, and it takes major cues from things like Waka Flocka and also like Witch House production. But I think this release, it comes off as pretty seamless and like honestly like gnarly. This is essentially a black gaze album, and to me this genre is sort of a mixed bag, but this album manages to do the genre justice with some pretty like elegant performances, some pretty compelling soundcraft along the way, lots of melody, and they seem to have a lot of fun when they're melting your face. There is a great emphasis on engaging songs and not a terrible amount focused on being overly heady or dour about things. Definitely some elements of what people refer to as J-rock or J-pop here. This album is absolutely not a dark and brooding album. It's more sort of anthemic in character, which isn't always my bag, but this album is my bag. Funeral Singer. This is a very cool band, and they just called it quits. They were also somewhat local to my area, but I never got a chance to see them live, which is a shame. Anyway, they played that sort of angular, mathy metal that I like a whole bunch. And they are so great at writing in this style. Their riffs are surprising and have great melodic bits, and they flow from section to section much better than your average band in this style. That's sort of like something that a lot of math metal or math rock bands tend not to do, is like transition between sections in a nice way, but this band always manages to do it well. So the Sweet Pill album, awesome riffs. It's a bit more chilled out emo rock with some mathy stuff thrown into places for some fun, tastefully. The vocalist is really going for it. She's coming through with striking performances, and there are a lot of harmonized vocals too, and all the music in this album is supporting the vocalist, which is maybe a bit different than a lot of the bands in this style. That a lot of the bands are sort of more instrumental focused, but this is kind of everything is in support of the vocal. I would like to hear them in the future experiment a bit more with song structures and longer forms, because I think a lot of these songs, I want them to be kind of like twice as long as they are and be a bit more explorative. But the sound that this band is coming with is really good. So this band, they're called. This band, they play a brand of math rock that's not overly complex, but definitely makes every bit of the songs richer. They're sort of doing the mathy thing to make the songs texturally interesting. There's a lot of different tones that they use all over the album. They make a lot of different sounds, very texturally interesting. But these songs, rather than being focused on being overly complex, they're very just like song focused. You can tell that the band really enjoys executing these songs. Really nice one. So this is a great like mathcore album with plenty of great melody and insanity. Insanity of many kinds. Very kind of expressive and wild, colorful, different versions of how to be insane. And the highs on this album are so high. The vocalist is really talented, and nothing on this album is here for no reason. It's definitely just chock full of good ideas. It's very like purposeful and deliberately constructed mathematical metal. Really cool. So Fleshwater, this album, it kind of reminded me of the Deftones, which is a band that seems to be having a moment right now on TikTok, but you know, Deftones always been good. These people been sleeping. Anyway, this band kind of reminds me of that sound. It's very like beautiful at the same time as quite heavy, and there's like warm atmosphere, but it feels all creepy. And so there's male and female vocals here that are both real good, and they complement each other, and such great drumming. So the songs here, they take a lot of unexpected directions, yet the music is very immediate to me. I think because it sounds like an update to a sound that I do already love so much. So it's a very good album. Bit of a crazy one, Nouns. These guys have a very noisy and abrasive approach to emo rock that I really dig. Very noisy, very abrasive. There's so many interesting textures created in the big, enveloping, warped walls of sound here. Structures that really throw one for a loop. And these guys are not afraid to just play their instruments in what are essentially solo sections, but they definitely don't come off as solos in like the cheesy way. They feel more like they're just kicking down your door, and they're not afraid to do that. Plenty of fascinating experiments done with vocal delivery here, and beautiful passages of relatively peaceful sections interspersed here and there, providing reprieve and sort of shreds of consonants to an otherwise unwieldy and unhinged, very dissonant experience. Really good album, really interesting. So this teen suicide album, Honeybee Table at the Butterfly Feast. I'm still working on what the concept of this album is trying to be. You know, obviously it's kind of vague, but cool still, you know, very, very interesting. They're clearly trying to do something pretty interesting. And, you know, a lot of the album is very interesting. I just don't think I get it very well yet. I would say that one thing about the songs contained here is that they are deeply moving, filled with grief and mourning. And that sort of develops into all sorts of directions. Like sometimes it's brutal and harsh, and sometimes like it comes into like very expressive melodies and like very beautiful atmospheres. There's so many moments of guitar that are fascinating and very layered. It's an album that's so rich in details. It's not afraid to experiment. A lot of experimental, interesting stuff. Like I said, I don't really think I understand it very well. A lot of varied things, but the way that this album pulls at your heartstrings brings the vision of the album into pretty stark familiarity. And in doing so, I think it forces the listener to introspect. I think that's a real word. Okay, so here's a modern metal album, which, I don't know, I'm not sure how to define modern metal yet. I don't know. That's all I'll say. I won't put it in a category. I guess it takes influence from math metal, or black metal does not take influence from math. Takes influence from black metal. I guess I've just been talking about math metal a few times in this video. Quite a few times. This album makes a great effort to be very nuanced and musical while it pummels you into a pulp. And I enjoy many moments here of creative vocal delivery, and it's a great example of how super clean production can actually result in something heavier and more brutal, which is often not the case, but this is a good example of how it can. It's how this cleaner style of production can be used to great effect to make something really successfully trying to be brutal. You know, they're not relying on so much distortion throughout a lot of this album to send them over the top, but they always make it over the top. I think this album's very interesting in that particular way. It's a whole kind of other brand of heaviness. It's quite good, quite creative. Absolutely have to mention this band Cloud Rat. They are rather nuts. They have such a creative way of expressing their unbridled rage, and this album is just totally unhinged. The drumming is so good and so important on this album. It helps kind of fill the lack of low end without a bass player, and so the drummer really has a very important, almost like tonal role. I love the riffs and the grooves that they weave together, and something Cloud Rat always does very well is that they always make you think, wow, that was bizarre. And that's what you find yourself thinking a lot, or I do, when I listen to Cloud Rat's music. And this album, full of surprises. I'm glad to hear another really good release from this band. Okay. Wormrot, Hiss. Such an ambitious grindcore album. In the past, I've always thought of them as just really gnarly and unrelenting, but here I find them to be much more kind of like heady, and like they're thinking about stuff really kind of on purpose and intentionally. They're being more experimental, incorporating some pretty fascinating rhythms. Gershwin, fascinating rhythm. So they're incorporating some pretty fascinating rhythms that serve to completely flabbergast me. Incorporating some great melodic work as well. But of course, they keep all that unrelenting stuff. And so they're doing I would say like more creative stuff. Like in the past, I've always thought of them as just like an incredibly oppressive, brutal grindcore band, but now they're doing all this stuff that makes all their stuff sound so much more colorful. This is a band that keeps getting better and better. Last, but absolutely not least, Black Country New Road. This Ants From Up There album. When I first heard this album, like for the first time, I cried in 3 distinct places. I'm not known to be much of a crier, but on this album there were 3. So the emotions of this album are obviously absolutely gripping, portrayed by the lyrics and the performances of these stunningly engaging and often strange compositions. The production makes you feel like you're in the same room as the band. This is an inspirationally manic depressive yet childlike body of work. What a sentence that is. And in moments here, I get the impression of kind of like high art. Like whenever you go to a museum and you like look at a $1 million painting. I get that impression sometimes when I listen to this music. It feels like, wow, this is like a rare treasure, one of a kind type of listening experience. And add to that a bunch of provenance in the form of lore, with him leaving the band just before this album came out. And so that makes it feel maybe even more like a high art. So the listening experience, because of him leaving the band, becomes something that feels special to be a part of. Like it's this movement that we're engaging with, and it's like something that's happening now, and it feels very current, and it feels like something that we can participate in and engage with. And him leaving the band, it almost makes me think that some of the album is even about him thinking about leaving the band or leaving the band. It's, some of the theme of the album is left kind of intentionally vague. But anyway, I mean, this album's just nuts. I love it so much. Really good. Thank you for watching this video. Those have been my top 40 albums of 2022. This video was fun to make. Had to think of what exactly I wanted to say about these albums, which ones I wanted to talk about, which ones I didn't want to talk about. But here we go. The video's out and you're watching it, and I'm happy I made it. And, time to make other YouTube videos. And when 2023 comes around, there's already some albums that I've really been enjoying from this year, which probably served as somewhat of a distraction from making this video, by the way. But looking forward to another great year of terrific music. Plan on keep on doing this channel because I really enjoy doing it. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found some great music. Subscribe. YouTube lets you subscribe, and then you get to see more of me. So, love you guys. Goodbye.